This episode is sponsored by Humanity, the full-service marketing agency that was built for changemakers. We believe that bold ideas can shift culture and can shape the future. It's why we work with founders and innovators and leaders to amplify their bold visions and turn their purpose into impact. Through strategy, behavioral science, and storytelling, we help organizations bring clarity to who they are, what they stand for, and how they connect with the world. We're here to help changemakers like you build what's next. Learn more at humanityagency.com.
Welcome to the next episode of the Sponsored Bex podcast. We're talking about and with changemakers, also known as Eliot Jackson. Eliot, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. Sponsorship X, I wanted to tell you. I figured I could tell you now.
You can. You and
we're
me.
in Paris. We're a sponsorship
We were.
X Paris.
Is that why you said we? Was that your French?
Wait. No, we were there, and that was like one of the best experiences I've ever had. And
Amazing.
Yeah, it was so good. I mean, so the content was so cool. I mean, being able to see all the activations during the event itself, met some really cool people. You had like a boat party.
We had a boat party.
Nice
Yeah.
job. Nice
Yeah.
job.
The boat didn't move, which was good. Nobody, absolutely zero people got seasick on that boat party. So it was incredible. Well, you know what actually is one of my favorite memories of Sponsorship X is we're in Whistler right now. You and I in Whistler 3 years ago, 2022, in the park in a couple of Muskoka chairs, which I don't know if that's a brand name, like Adirondacks. Canadians call them Muskoka, Americans call them Adirondacks or something. Anyway, and we had a great chat.
Yeah.
And you were literally, I don't want to use the pun, beginning to grow.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm not the first person who said that. But yeah, Paris was a lot of fun. But today, here we are. And I would love to chat with you, about grow cycling. Since the last time I talked to you in that park, the pump track in LA was just a vision.
Yeah.
Now it's a reality. Now it's national. We want to talk about partnerships.
Yeah.
And so it's awesome to be here. And congrats on your event last night. So where should we start? Why don't we start with last night, actually? We're going to start backwards.
Okay.
And then we'll get into, by the way, I love that picture of you from 9 years ago. But last night, you hosted the second Aspire event. Tell us what is Aspire and what it's all about and its relationship to Grow Cycling.
Yeah, sure. So I think we'll get into it, but there's like two pieces of context that I think are interesting, which is me as a young athlete, and then also me as a nonprofit founder trying to bring opportunity to underserved people and trying to spread kind of what I love, which is bicycles.
Mm-hmm.
And as you are an athlete and as you start to branch out from being an athlete, you stop or whatever, and even during, there are so many times when you are in uncharted territory. And so you're trying to get a partnership, you're trying to get a sponsorship. Every year you're selling yourself, you're pitching, you're doing all of these things. And it is in tandem with you trying to be the best athlete in the world. And so we really thought about, what happens after opportunity presents itself.
Mm-hmm.
How do you kind of take action on that? And there are these kind of two components, which is the education piece. How do I pitch? What do I pitch? And then who do I know? How do you build the relationships? And so in Whistler, you have this event called Crankworks, and
20th anniversary this year.
20th anniversary.
Incredible.
I've been here for maybe half of them.
Oh, I thought you were going to say 30.
Okay,
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
You know what? Okay. We won't get to age,
Yeah.
Mark.
young athlete. I was like, this podcast is all about the truth, and you're 2 minutes in. You got one lie left, okay? Like two truths and a lie,
Here we
two
go.
lies and a truth.
No, but so you have this event called Crankworks, and you have this confluence of people, which is young athletes.
Mm-hmm.
You have pro athletes who are the best in the world. You have Red Bull Joyride and things like that. And then you have industry here. It's kind of become a bit of an industry mixer. And then you have the people who are trying to get into the sport from the outside. Right. I think of like my parents growing up, they didn't know anything about the sport. And so if you put these three groups together, kind of the community, the athletes, and the industry, you have this mix where you have the athletes sharing things where they are more than an athlete, them pitching things, them starting businesses,
right.
The industry being able to connect with the younger generation. And so that was kind of the idea behind Aspire is what does it look like to put these 3 groups of people together, educate people, introduce people. And so, as I like to tell the story, is like doing this with no consequences when like a World Cup season isn't on the line. And it's just all about learning and sharing your aspirations and trying to achieve your dreams.
I love that. And I think the beautiful thing about doing something with no consequences is you end up being more free,
Yeah.
right? It's sort of like, when you're competing, and then it's like when you just get with your buddies, you just go and ride,
Yeah.
right? Like there's such a difference, right?
Yeah.
Where you're not worried about, did I win? Did I lose? Did I get my sponsor logo up there? And so, and again, we're going backwards, and we're going to touch more on Aspire. So you've got Aspire, the foundation, the kind of post-competitive pro athlete, Elliot, even though I still think of you as a pro athlete, is Grow Cycling. So talk to us about Grow Cycling,
Yeah.
what it does,
Yeah.
where it came from, and, we'll get into what it's doing, and we'll also get into where it's heading.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I ended my pro athlete career. I guess, like you said, ended my competitive career. I still am an athlete.
Yeah.
Still, doing things on the athletic side. But in 2020, and so we also had, all of the social justice movement, the murder of George Floyd, and all of these things. And there was this interesting thing that happened in the bike industry, which was an industry that kind of touts itself as very inclusive and very open and kind of culturally heterogeneous, if you will, right? Like we are open to everyone, and opportunity is just a step outside. And I was getting all of these calls, which were like, what do I do? Like you're kind of the only Black person I know.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
we're a bike company, we're donating to the NAACP, which didn't quite line up if you was to say, well, why don't you have a bunch of relationships with people who should be within your community? And as we started to think about it, I think for me, like I've never really been I don't consider myself even now like an activist or anything like that, but it was kind of, what do I do? Thinking as a kind of a business person, what is the opportunity now to actually help the industry build relationships, and then also have the communities that I come from have more opportunity? And so what we came up with was this idea of Grow Cycling Foundation, which is all about education, access, and opportunity. And so, Aspire, right, is kind of the education piece that we'll say later. But the access was the idea to build a pump track in Los Angeles. And a pump track is kind of a bike park. You could kind of think about it as a more accessible skate park for bikes. So you can be 2 years old, 90 years old, and ride around it. And it was the first dedicated cycling space in Los Angeles. And we needed to raise $1.2 million to do that.
Right.
From an industry who, at points didn't really believe that was a problem or that it was possible to raise that much money. And I think the key to that, right, was partnerships. There was some really interesting stuff we did around, for example, we had an initiative with Santa Cruz Bicycles where they donated some bikes, and we raffled them off with their professional teams. But then we said, okay, Red Bull, instead of you giving us $100,000 of Red Bull money, maybe you give us $100,000 of Red Bull marketing, or use that to kind of promote all of the things that are revenue generating for us. So we ended up raising $1 million in
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It was didn't feel easy at the time.
No,
like that was
probably doesn't feel easy now.
No,
either,
it doesn't
right?
feel easy now. And so we were able to start construction. And the thing I think that was also interesting is we did it in the city of Inglewood. And the city of Inglewood has this long storied history of sports, and I think of really understanding the power that sports have to be generational wealth builders. I again think of another way that you could think about access is who you have access to, and you have all of these NBA players and NFL players who are now becoming VCs and things like that. And so I think that they understood more than anyone what it means to have access to sport, what sports could do. And so even though all of these cities around said, why would we build a pump track? Why would we build a dedicated cycling space if there's no cyclists? I don't see a 5-year-old riding around or whatever.
Because there's nowhere for them to be riding around. Yeah.
Right. Like, do you ride on
On the freeway?
Boulevard,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, right.
And so as we got this off the ground and we launched it, they were incredible partners. You know, we had the same opening kind of ceremony with the same people as SoFi Stadium did, which is
Right.
2 miles away. And I think from there, it was really, interestingly enough, more apparent to the outside of the industry. And so that was the end of 2023. And we've had over 120,000 visitors there.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, we've been in the LA Times, like, you know, it was just people finding us and saying, this is a story that is really interesting. But I think I kind of go back, right, to the inception of it, which was really it's about empowerment before acceptance, right? I think so many people say, oh, well, if you could just, why don't we accept people first? And then that would bring the opportunity. But for me, it's the opposite. Empower them with the space that they can make their own. And then, right, it becomes a movement, and that kind of momentum keeps going.
Well, and to your point, unless people have a place to ride, which is a metaphor for a place to be seen, a metaphor for them to be able to do what they want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to get into like the 120, like all the people coming. But before I do that, I'm just going to go back to, do you remember the day and date that you had the idea to build an inner city pump track?
I mean, I think that it was a really interesting.
Were you awake or were you asleep when the idea came to you?
I think the real story of how we got there was the original. We called it a foundation.
Yep.
Originally, because of that problem that I kind of highlighted in the beginning, which was here's this industry that has no connection to a group that they are saying that they are interested in helping. So the easiest thing to do is just say, like, we'll be a traditional foundation. We can help allocate those resources to all of these hundreds or thousands of organizations in the US and around the world that are actually doing the work already to get, you know, people of color on bikes, to get underserved youth on bikes, to get, you know, all of these people. And so as we started to dig in, that was kind of probably the cynical take. And then the more charitable take, as we started to talk to people, was that they really did want to help. And then it was kind of like, okay, so if that is the case, what does it look like for us? And I think I grew up, you know, going down to the local construction site and building jumps for my bike and stuff like that. And I think, you know, we didn't grow up with, you know, a whole lot of money or whatever. And so it was always about doing free stuff, where can you ride and things. And so I think it just felt a little bit obvious that the lack of infrastructure, and I kind of think of us as an infrastructure company, was just appalling, I guess. People maybe didn't see that.
Right. And so to your point, until you can have inclusion, you've got to empower people. And in this case, it was the lack of infrastructure, right? People, and that's systemic, right? I think that's one of the things that sometimes people forget about these issues is it's one thing to have bigotry or prejudice, but I'm going to use the word racism, which is often misconstrued for kind of an attitude, but it's systemic, right? Inglewood, no bike park. So I've never seen a black person on a pump track. Well, or on a bike, well, there's no place for them to be on that bike. So you can't take the evidence of absence of kids participating. You know, it'd be like having no basketball courts and saying nobody in LA wants to play basketball.
100%. There's two things there that I always think are really interesting. So there's these
just two? I thought it was better than that. Maybe three.
No, you don't get the magic
about me.
three.
Okay, this is your podcast. Okay.
You don't get the magic three.
Okay.
One of them is one of them is the location, and one of them is what I like to consider sport desire, which you're kind of alluding to with the NBA. And so when you look at the kind of the location, we're, as the crow flies, about 4 or 5 miles. The pump track is in Inglewood from Santa Monica. And so if you can pull up both maps and you start to overlay cycling infrastructure on top of it. What are the bike lanes? What are the shared bike lanes? What are the protected bike lanes? And as you layer these things on, almost every square mile of Santa Monica City, maybe a 10, 15 like mile square footage, And then you go to Inglewood.
Let me guess, it's accessible and set up well for bikes and all the rest of it in Santa Monica?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. In Santa Monica. I thought you were going to say in Inglewood.
No.
Yeah. In Santa Monica, it's completely full.
Yeah.
And you go to Inglewood 5 miles away and there's nothing.
Right.
And so the two things you think about is, one, I am never going to start riding a bike if there's no place for me to start riding a bike. Exactly what you were saying. And the other thing that I think is interesting is the cost. And so we built this $1.2 million pump track with 120,000 people. You start to do the math, that's only $10 per rider.
Right.
You think about the amount of riders, obviously there's probably more, but the amount of dollars that it takes to build out the cycling infrastructure in Santa Monica, billions and billions of dollars.
Right.
This is a pretty good investment in terms of getting people on bikes, getting people exercising, especially in Black and brown communities, who need it the most. And again, I think that we overlook these kind of solutions that should kind of be obvious. And then kind of to the participation point, why do I ride a bike instead of playing basketball? Are my friends riding bikes? Is anyone that's culturally relevant to me riding bikes? And like you think about, there's always this thing that comes up, which is like, we think that access is the barrier when there is a desirable activity to us. And so if I said to you, like, do we need more trash truck jobs for more trash truck drivers? You'd be like, no, like not that many people want to do that, or
right.
And I say, what's the reason that people aren't riding bikes? A lot of people will say, oh, they just need bikes. They need more affordable bikes. They need all of these different things. And so the flip side to the infrastructure piece is actually, do I want to do the thing in the first place?
Right.
And I think, especially in the outdoors, you kind of go back to these companies not having the relationship, which means they can't market to them and tell the stories. How do you combine these two cultures that haven't really been combined? And I think that that's also something we're really passionate about, is allowing people to make this space their own.
And with the literally tens of thousands of people that are coming, I guess you've got the evidence that this is something that youth want to do. Tell us about, like, who are they? Why are they coming? What are their experiences? What is their background in terms of being on a bike?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of everyone.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of, especially, people my age who are having kids, and they grew up riding bikes.
Yeah.
And so you have, dads and moms taking their sons and daughters out there. I think that there's, one of the things that was super heartwarming for me on opening day, there was a kid who came up, maybe 11, 12 years old. He had his bike and he said, I can't believe this is here. I told my mom that they're opening a pump track and I'm gonna ride over there. And she said, you can't do that. You can't get on the train. And he said, no, Mom, it's 2 blocks away.
Right.
And so
her perception was it was a minimum 5-10 miles away.
Right. And so like, here's this kid, obviously, not able to ride his bike. There's always a barrier. Like, the parents are seeing this, there's a barrier.
Right.
And now he has something in his backyard. And so you have people like that. I think you have a lot of the BMX racers. There's a lot of athletes, actually, where maybe the race trapper was farther away and now they have a place to train. And so I think it's a bit of everyone. And I think that's kind of, even for us, right? Like, it surprised us where
it's amazing.
Yeah. Like, you can't really predict like who is going to love it and who is going to be there.
Right. Question for you. What happens when you take the unbelievable hospitality of Sponsorship X and mix it with the first ever professional women's soccer championship in this country, the NSL final? I'll tell you what you get. You get the Sponsorship X Changemaker Summit happening November 13th to 15th in Toronto, Ontario. You're gonna get workshops, keynotes all about entrepreneurship, innovation, impact, and sponsorship from a bevy of international speakers. We're gonna have a small side football tournament. We are gonna have an opportunity to witness NSL activations. We are all going to attend the historic first ever NSL final on Saturday, November 15th at BMO Field. You know there's gonna be great networking, great fun, great learning. So sign up today at sponsorshipx.com for the Change Makers Summit. And you made a comment earlier about, healthcare and well-being in the community. That's one of the knock-on effects. One of the other interesting knock-on effects is you just made the neighborhood better,
Yeah.
right? So, people often look at where they're going to live, those with money,
Yeah.
and it's access. Now, for people that maybe have had to live in a neighborhood due to budget, you've actually enhanced their quality of life.
Yeah.
Mom knows there's a safe, close place for son or daughter to be.
Totally. Yeah, I think that is interesting. And as we were talking to, the city leadership, one of the things that I thought was interesting was we were talking to the mayor, and he said a lot of our constituents probably won't ever step foot in SoFi Stadium. It's $1 billion stadium.
Yeah, unless they're there to work.
Right.
Right.
Unless they're there to work. And
Yeah.
so you kind of think about things like this pump track as
Yeah.
being stadium for everyone. It's open.
Yeah.
It's in a public park.
And did you get municipal funding? Because and look, I love American football. I realize there's a lot of structural issues. We could probably an entire different podcast on it. But the reality is often when these teams, which are owned by the wealthiest of the wealthy, are pitching municipalities and states and government levels for tax breaks and incentives, yet to your point, those tickets are so expensive and there's 9 home games, some concerts or whatever. Did you get municipal funding for this pump track?
We did it,
Yeah.
not for this one.
Yeah.
I think that we were so early.
Yeah.
Now there's more pump tracks being built. There's a pump track being built in Santa Monica and all around. But
And who's building these other pump tracks?
there are companies who build pump tracks. And
Yeah.
I think that the interesting dynamic is that you have kind of the second layer of city kind of leadership, city councilmen, city councilwomen, and they are really interested in it.
Yeah.
They can be really interested in it, but I think for them it's really hard to get it pushed through.
Right.
So what we did was to say, if you give us the space,
Yeah.
if you take care of it,
Yeah.
we will fund it.
Okay.
And so,
So in a way, you've got a resource allocation,
yep,
land
yep.
and maintenance.
And then we have a contract with them,
Oh, do you?
yep, to operate it. And so we're the sole kind of operator. If we want to hold events there and things
Cool.
like that, we have kind of a license to do that. And so I think then what that did was to give, a Santa Monica or something like that, a license to say, this is what Inglewood did.
Right.
Look at how
Here's
many
the
people are
blueprint.
there.
Yeah.
Look at the basketball courts that are empty. Look
Yeah.
at the playgrounds maybe that are
Yeah.
empty. This thing is full
Yeah.
every single day. And our constituents, to your point of this is a thing that a city can do for their constituents that makes them happy to vote for them,
Right.
happy to
Yeah.
continue to pay taxes and whatever.
I love it. So one last question about Grow, and then I want to talk more about what you're up to these days. But a couple things. One is I'd love to know what's next for Grow, and what's next for Aspire. So 2 questions in one.
Yeah, I think we're at this point where I've always had this idea of I think we're at this point where the idea that I've had for a nonprofit is for it to not become, I guess, maybe a traditional nonprofit
Yep.
where you fundraise so that you can fundraise more, and
Yeah.
you fundraise
Yeah.
so that you
Fundraising for permission to raise more money.
Totally.
Right.
And so I've always thought about us as like, one of the metrics we have is like, what is the wind down period of a project?
Mm-hmm.
And so the way we structured the pump track is like, now there is no ongoing costs. We
Okay.
have no administration there. There's kind of nothing there that kind of keeps me on the wheel to do that. And that's kind of what I think about for all of our projects. And so it also gives us at each point the ability to change directions
Mhm.
and do what we need to do. And so one of the directions that we're going in Inglewood is testing out this model of having something on site. So the next piece, if you were to think about, what's the next domino that needs
Yeah.
to fall in the infrastructure, is well, where do you get your bike fixed at? And if there's no bike lanes and no bike access, probably not going to be any bike shops either.
Right.
And so then you end up going out of your neighborhood, and it's really hard to trust. Where is the trust built up? Do I know what's going on? There's a lot of agitation there. And so we're kind of testing out this model of let's build something on site. And so Inglewood donated a building to us that is a stone's throw away from the pump track, putting a mechanic in there, putting food in there and things like that. And I think the other piece that we're really trying to think about is, is bike ownership even necessary at the beginning?
Right.
People talk a lot about the cost of a bike,
Yeah.
$1,000, whatever. I mean, to me, like even $200 is too much. And you go to every other sport, you go skiing, you don't buy skis right away.
Right.
Everything you kind of rent to try.
Yeah.
And so for us, what is it?
I love how your analogy was like the world's most expensive sport, like skiing.
Exactly.
But yeah,
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting where it's like, oh, to get into this, come here, have a bike. I mean, there's so many opportunities to get integrated with cities and schools. Maybe a report card, gets you a discount on bike, or you can, work your way.
So is your vision that your facility will have food, it'll have mechanics, but at some point you'll have loaner bikes?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think that we want to test out step by step. I think the first step is really to get this building going, stock it, get a mechanic in there, make sure the community is comfortable with that,
right,
and then start to slowly iterate. Because I think that, to me, there really has to be partnership is kind of this thing where, especially when you think about doing it in service of lifting others up, there has to be a participation on the back end by the community. And so in this situation, we could just go in and rent, the constituents' bikes, but that wouldn't quite be enough because we're kind of extracting there. We come in and we are just taking rent.
Yeah.
And even though it's nice and we're doing a good service and it's cheap, what does it look like for the constituents of Inglewood to also participate in something like that? And so, like I said, maybe that is, we do a lot with the schools. And so maybe that would be partnering with the teachers to say, hey, we're going to do field trips here. Or, hey, if you are a member of the Inglewood Unified School District, you can work your way into having this bike and owning it. And so now you're increasing the assets of the city itself. So I think that is something that just don't want to jump into it. It's it's one of those really complex things. We've made so many mistakes,
but you're pioneering something, and that's a bad expression, but you're innovating and doing something new. And it kind of reminds me, and I just forgot his name, of the gentleman in LA who's kind of, perfected the street gardens, right?
Yeah.
Where it's a bit of a metaphor, it's a bit cliched, but you're teaching people how to grow their own vegetables.
Yeah.
You're not just saying, hey, come here and we're giving you fresh salad that you could only get in Santa Monica. Now we've got fresh tomatoes in Inglewood.
Totally.
But ultimately you're helping them say, oh, I'm going to earn. Yeah. I'm not just going to earn the salad. I'm going to earn that plot of land. I'm going to learn how to plant the tomatoes.
Totally. Yeah.
And this is and so as Grow continues on, and so I heard last night, I'm time dating this pod a little bit, but obviously it was August 9th. Aspire is going to continue on. Will Aspire continue at Crankworks? Will there be other iterations? What's your thinking?
Yeah, I mean, definitely at Crankworks.
Yep.
I think as we thought about it, I mentioned those kind of ingredients of community, athletes, and industry.
Yeah.
And those exist in a lot of places. And so I think, the model can exist in other places. I think that having this space to kind of iterate again on what that truly looks like and making sure every one of those stakeholders gets value. So I think it's definitely a repeatable thing. And we're interested and open to going other places. But again, I think it's nonprofit work to me is being in the game for a really long time and staying in the game for a really long time. And it's not about how fast you can move. It's the amount of impact that you can make with every given thing.
No, I love that. Too many times you hear people trying to become the biggest nonprofit right out of the gate and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I do think my mom, who is I pulled her out of retirement. She was an investment banker to do this with me. And we talk about impact per dollar for Grow versus a larger thing. And so even though, we are this project-based, partnership-based organization, the impact that we have made, I think is really large.
So I've sort of flipped the order of this podcast around a bit, because usually in podcasts we like, tell us about your childhood, tell us your favorite color and your favorite ice cream. So now we're going to talk a little bit about you, but we're actually going to start with your mom, because you told me a story a couple of years ago about your mom, and you mentioned investment banking. So talk about your mom trailblazing her career in that.
Yeah, I think I grew up in this entrepreneurial household. We were racing motocross when I was maybe up to 10 or 11 years old. And, you know, during my childhood, my mom was always writing business plans. And I would be like, what is it? She would just be like, I love it, you know? And so maybe when I was 13, 14, I guess it was a lot earlier than that, she had this dream to own an investment bank. We lived in Oklahoma. She was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked at a body shop. We were not wealthy. For her to
when you say body shop, do you mean like the shampoos and the herbs and all that, like conditioners and stuff? Like, are you talking about Anita here, or are you talking about like 68 Chevys?
These are like 68 Chevys.
I want to know what's the body shop you're talking about?
He's got, he's buffy, like, you know what I mean? It's gone. So, and so, you know, it wasn't until so much later that I really understood the like gravity of this, because you'd say, well, how does somebody do this?
Like, how do you go from
stay-at-home mom? Totally. And so one of the first things that she did was she called Morgan Stanley every day to get a meeting with the CEO, because she was like, well, I want to know how to do this. Like, obviously couldn't get through, and eventually the secretary was like, okay, you have 5 minutes with him. He said he'll give you 5 minutes. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And so I want to own my own investment bank. And he said, okay, well, you don't need to own it. You don't need to do that. You should buy a shell company that already has their license, the brokerage license done. And she was like, okay, I can do that. And so she went from there.
Great advice.
And so I can't remember exactly, but maybe it was $20,000 or $50,000 that she needed to kind of buy a defunct, like pretty much just a brokerage license. And she started calling California and all of these brokerage firms, and talking to the brokers. You know, this was mid 90s, and pitching them and saying, hey, like, I have this idea or whatever. Couple of them were kind of crazy enough to believe her. They obviously had clients. One of them had some Saudi Arabian clients. They convinced them to come in, and so she started this company. She was like, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to be the CEO. And she started this company.
Amazing.
And we moved out to California, and it was successful, right? Like, they helped take electronic arts public, like participated in that. They did some amazing kind of movie deals and all of these things, but it was this thing of just problem solving, finding a way in, and then grinding your way, calling every single day for years, to raise the money to do this thing. And she did that for, until a little bit, I think that in about 2002. And I think that they were probably at the time, I mean, she was one of 3 women to own an investment bank.
And probably the only Black one.
For sure.
Yeah. But, you know, for people out there that are in the business of selling, right? And everyone says, you know, how many no's is a no? Like, do you have a sense of how many times she called Morgan Stanley to talk to the CEO? I mean, like, was it 10? Was it 110?
I mean, I would imagine. I would imagine it's definitely over 50, over 75.
Right. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
Like, yeah.
And then received 5 minutes. Right.
Totally.
Great advice.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, and I think that is. We were talking about it last night of just no is not failure.
Yeah.
And I think that when you think about a story like that, it's not a thing where, even with what I did with Grow, it's like, man, I got hundreds, 1,000 no's to do that.
Right.
But here is something, the amount of ambition, and you have a story that is a decade long to do this. And so you might be like, oh man, that's crazy. Like, this person owns an investment bank. She's doing so good now and all of these things. But Like that's a
People don't
decade in the
people don't
making.
see the grind.
Yeah.
They don't see the grind. So real quick, kind of to wrap things up, kind of next 90 seconds. We've heard a lot about your approach. We know that impact is important to you, but hey, we all got to eat. So what are you up to these days? What's going on? Tell us, like,
Yeah.
how does one make bread these days, and what's happening?
Yeah. So I my other life is
Yeah.
as a commentator, broadcaster, presenter for Red Bull.
Right. Are you any good?
I think you know what? I'm good.
Okay.
I'm
okay,
good.
Good.
You can see
All
me
right.
on Friday.
Yeah, all right.
You'll see me.
Awesome.
So I do that. I really love it. I play the expert role.
Yeah.
So any sort of their kind of downhill mountain biking stuff, I'm
Right.
the guy for that.
Yeah.
I also am still an athlete. So anytime a Santa Cruz Bikes, for example, launches a bike, I can be like the face of XYZ. So I do that in addition to grow. And I think that I am kind of loving this mix,
Mhm.
like the mix of being able to do something in the bike industry, communication, the analysis and that sort of thing. And also the kind of the business of grow and being an athlete, and they all kind of work together as well. It's really cool.
And are you traveling a lot?
I am. This year, a little bit less, but yeah, there is a couple of different countries every month. I think.
Wow,
So,
every
yeah.
month?
Yeah, probably
Yeah.
on average, I would
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
So last question, and sometimes people say, give a piece of advice to your younger self. So I'm going to flip it around because you are young.
Sure.
I'm not. I look ahead a decade.
Yeah.
Give Eliot a piece of advice for 2035.
Oh man. I would say the word that keeps coming to mind is relax.
Okay.
And enjoy it. And if you continue to do what you do, you will be successful, because I think it's just finding the goalpost and one step in front of the other
Right.
to meet the goalpost. And I think that that's kind of looking back, that is the thing that I always think about, is like, oh, I was so impatient, but like here I am 10 years later, and that thing happened way quicker than I thought it was going to, and I was super stressed about it.
That's a very powerful insight, because I think so many of us forget that sometimes you look back and go, that wasn't nearly as hard as you thought, or it got there, but looking this way, looking forward. So I love that.
Yeah.
Relax.
Chill.
Well, you look chill. Thank you, my friend.
Likewise.
All right.
Yeah.
It's great to have you once again. Mark Harrison, Eliot Jackson, Sponsorbeck's podcast. We're talking to and with changemakers.